Hi, I'm Guy Lawrence, and you are listening to the Guy Lawrence podcast. If you're enjoying this content and you want to find out more and join me and come further down the rabbit hole, make sure you head back to guylawrence.com.au. Awesome, guys. Enjoy the show. Niraj, welcome to the podcast.
A pleasure to be here.
I ask everyone on the show, if a complete stranger stops you on the street and asks you what you did for a living, what would you say?
That's a very, very cool question. Well, it depends on who, maybe stops me in the street because there's many different ways you could describe what I do. But I would say now, through the evolution of where I'm at, I help people to really find out what it is that their inner calling is that they've been too scared to go after, that their passion and life kind of has meaning behind. I help people discover that meaning again for what it is they really want to do in their life and give them the tools and the alignment and the container to be able to go after it. That's that in a nutshell as a result of what I do. But we also have a very powerful community, an online school. We have over 180 instructors around the world, all around this breathing technique that really is what delivers that result. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Where
that's
I'm at.
awesome. And trying to connect, I think for a lot of people, breathing and finding and having the courage to follow your core purpose, like that can feel
Strange, right?
totally, so
Yeah, yeah.
how did you make that connection in the first place?
Okay, that's a good question. So a little bit about my story then. So I actually was a community pharmacist in the UK and in Berkshire, Surrey, where I used to live, all these different places. I used to work in the community, and it was the most soul destroying thing I ever did. But it also gave me a great perspective on, the kind of normal way of life, kind of the status quo of England, and working in the community, meeting all different types of people from different like levels of income and background and education and noticing that there's so much misinformation and confusion about what it means to be healthy. And uh, also the healthcare profession, I realized is just not serving people at all. And it's been extremely biased towards the use of prescription medication as treatments, which has just been numbing people down for, decades. So I just became more and more disillusioned, and out of that kind of disillusionment and depression I went into, I really wanted to obviously do something about it. I had no idea what, and a friend of mine took me kicking and screaming to a Tony Robbins event, and that was actually a huge. I mean, I was very skeptical about it, but it happened to be like a huge turning point. It's the first time I heard anyone ever talk about how diet, nutrition, breath, and all these things relate to your health in a very, very, very concise and well structured way. So I was like, well, if this is true, then I should be able to use this information in the pharmacy and even myself to get people off medications, because I just couldn't understand a system where we're trying to get people onto drugs, which are causing side effects and definitely don't fix anything. And I was like, well, why is that the case? So I put it onto me to get people off the drugs because I thought that would be a better and onto more like actual good lifestyles for their health. And I started to write these shopping lists and had amazing results with these healthy shopping lists of changing people's diets around, their lives around through their diets. And that got me promoted eventually. It got me into a little bit of trouble in the beginning, but it got me promoted to the head office of one of the biggest supermarket chains in the UK. And I was coming up with this healthy shopping list service for them, which after about 6 months got shelved for various reasons, and
Wow.
who knows the absolute truth, but it was a controversial project, telling people not to drink Coca-Cola and eat ready meals and things like that all day long. And anyway, that got me then, like, I got even more disillusioned. I thought I was trying to help humanity here. And I actually thought I was really healthy actually at this point. I remember at this point I'd gone on this very, very vegetarian, considered, like what was considered super healthy back then. This kind of vegan, vegetarian, raw foodie sort of diet. Lots of salads and things. And actually, I remember at the time thinking, actually, this isn't really working for me. Even though it seemed to be, this acid alkaline balance thing was the whole rage at the time in 2011. And then I actually got hit, like, with this chronic illness that left me housebound for a year, called ulcerative colitis, where I was literally shitting blood 40 times a day. Really nasty autoimmune condition. And I was just ready to give up hope. I was like, what is going on? So I tried at this time every single diet, like, that was considered healthy at the time. Nothing was helping me. It was making it worse. And the doctors even told me that stress, diet, all these things have no impact on colitis, and just to shut up and stop and keep taking the drugs. So I was about to get my colon removed, or I was going to be uh,
Wow.
literally on a pill that had never ever been tested before as a guinea pig. So I was like desperate, and they say that God stands for gift of desperation. And literally at that time, came to the rescue a very dear friend of our family now, Swami Kananda, who taught me the foundations of pranayama, Ayurveda, and yoga, with the aim to get me back to normal. And she said, if you can cure yourself, you'll be a great role model. And she was completely right. It was like a prophecy that came true. And in a few months, I actually healed myself. And this is when I really understood what it means to be healthy. Because, um, every day when I was like starting to get sick, I was waking up like regretting my decision to go and work for this company, and getting to work was a chore. And I felt super scared as well about going back to my even worse job as a pharmacist. And they say in Ayurveda that your disease is a spiritual disturbance. And what does spiritual mean? It's energy, spirit, prana, energy, breath. They all have the same meaning. And actually, spiritual comes from the Latin word for the root word for the term to breathe. So spirit means breath. Spirituality means to breathe. And this was really interesting because in pranayama, and even Ayurveda, they talk about, as a prescription, they also give prescriptions for your lifestyle based on your energy types. That there's certain breathing patterns that invoke different states in the body and quickly change the physiological state. And my Swami had taught me this one breathing technique, which it brings you back into balance. And when you bring your energy back into balance, you change the physiology in your body. When you change the physiology in the body, okay, because that's the instant way to change your physiology is through your breath, right? You actually can create a balance between your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, which means you can control your emotions. And your emotions really is just energy in motion. So through breathing techniques, you can actually create like a homeostasis. Through that state that you can go into, can emerge like your real truth, you know. Because if you can imagine, most of us are going through life with a big guard on, a big mask on, based on all the conditionings that's happened over the years. And, setbacks or things that happen in childhood, the first 7 years are super conditioning to who you are and your habits and instincts. And so quite often we're very switched on sympathetically and looking out for danger. And that can actually make us closed off as people. It can make us really closed off to connecting, to exploring, to doing things outside of the box. And it can keep people confined into a structured kind of ordered way of life, which is very robotic and not necessarily who they are, which is who I had become. And as soon as I started to get into this breathing practice, I started to wake up to who I really am and started to actually take the blinkers off, change the frequency that I was tuning into. And, obviously it's a form of meditation as well. So breathing practices, pranayama and meditation go hand in hand. And that was it. That was for me the fastest way to get back in meditation and breathing practice, to get back into who I really am. And then have the bravery and courage to go after what I wanted.
And that's the step, right? And it's getting to know thyself. I can certainly relate to that journey of yours. Question for you then, that triggered, because you spoke about the breath, connecting to our purpose, and you also mentioned that the breath, that connection to spirituality, to prana, to source energy, whatever you want to call it. Do you think that's a crucial component if we are to live in alignment of who we really are and allow the essence of us to flow through us and honor our purpose, whatever that might look like? Do you think without that spiritual connection component that you speak of, and I can certainly relate to it too, that without that it becomes very difficult?
Yeah, so the breath can be unconscious, like operate unconsciously, but also consciously. So it's the one thing that we have conscious control over, but also works on autopilot. Now, the autopilot part is run by the reptilian brain, or the most primitive part of the brain, the brainstem. And the brainstem, literally, all it cares about is your survival, right? That's all your subconscious mind is trying to do, is to get you to survive, right, at all costs. So in this crazy world that we've created, this part of the brain is always on high alert. And if you're not conscious about your breathing, you're going to breathe like somebody who's scared, right? You're going to breathe like somebody who's anxious or who's under stress. And if that carries on all day long, that changes your whole physiology towards a stressed out person. And that chronic stress has a physiological problem with the body. It paralyzes you, it slows you down, it puts you on high alert. It might make you instinctively say things that you wouldn't normally say, and react or get into fights and arguments and conflicts. Now, we can consciously control this, but we don't do it because we're not taught how to do it from a young age. We're not given any kind of manual on breathing and what conscious breathing means. When you consciously control your breath, even just for a few minutes a day, you can create balance back in the body, and you can switch off the reptilian brain and become more open. And there's this really good book, The Surrender Experiment, by Michael Singer, who I recommend everyone reads. And he became like a billionaire just by becoming more consciously aware of, things that were affecting his progress in life. And he just became much more open as a person, open to opportunity, and not closing down and not trying to control everything. And somebody who's very sympathetic, dominant, they tend to hoard things. They tend to be protective, possessive, greedy. They tend to be jealous. They get angry easily. They want to control everything. And these are the extreme levels, right? And then there's other people who are a lot more open, adventurous, curious, and they tend to attract positive things into their life a lot more by staying more open. And you can actually change that state. You can actually do that just through controlling the breath, just by becoming relaxed instantly through the conscious change of your breath. These are the practices I learned, and these rhythms, like breathing in, extending your exhalation. Like, your exhalation is what controls your vagus nerve. So when you breathe out longer than you breathe in, okay, if you can do a rhythm of that, like where I tend to do this 2-4 rhythm, or 4-8 rhythm, where you breathe in for 4, out for 8, do it as a rhythm, you quickly, within a minute, switch off the sympathetic nervous system. And by doing this and using various techniques over time of really going deep on pranayama, you actually will become much more of a balanced person, where you aren't lazy, you're not like apathetic or lazy or really super parasympathetic where you don't want to do anything, and you're not like super aggressive and sympathetic. You become more balanced. And I think the natural way to be, the more Zen Jedi way to be, is to be in control of those two sides of your autonomic nervous system, and be more in balance and flow.
Yeah, beautiful. Would you
Yeah.
would you recommend people to start with that breath in for two, out for four, with that
Yeah.
exhale?
We actually have made a routine that you can do every day that just gets you into that state. And it's based on pranayama technique of rhythmic breathing
Hmm.
with breath retention. Okay. So this is actually a system of getting that somehow the yogis figured out thousands of years ago, of getting oxygen into the cells in the most efficient way. All right. So when you breathe in oxygen. When you breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay. So we know that basic kind of respiratory system. And what happens is when you breathe in fast, okay, like so somebody is stressed, they tend to breathe in more oxygen and breathe out more carbon dioxide than normal. What that does is it starts to change the pH slightly, and over time it can lead to something called respiratory alkalosis, which is associated with panic attacks. Okay, and you get contraction. Oxygen actually causes vasoconstriction, not dilation. Carbon dioxide causes dilation, expansion, nitric oxide. Okay, it lowers the blood pressure. All right. So what happens is with people who are very stressed, very who talk a lot as well, all day long, talking, like I'm talking right now. You get lightheaded after a while of talking a lot, right? The reason is because you breathe out all the carbon dioxide, and it's very easy to become saturated with oxygen. Oxygen's very abundant, right? But when you're talking a lot, you're breathing out very quickly. You tend to breathe out carbon dioxide, and if you're stressed, you actually trigger the same response in the body as if you're preparing for battle, fight or flight response. So you start to breathe more because you think that you need more to burn more energy. So, which is all, this is all in the unconscious world. It's not consciously, you know that you're not going to fight someone, but emotionally you may be
Mm.
feeling that way, and it's kind of translated in the body as though you're about to prepare for a fight. When actually it may be that there's a boss that's been bullying you or putting deadlines that aren't reasonable, or you may have just forgotten to do something, and you're going to get and there's all this future stress, and then there's the negative stress of the guilt and shame from the past and things like that that holds people back into the state of stress. So um, so with this rhythmic breathing, you can consciously control it in your favor. So if you leave it on its own, you could be breathing at an erratic rate that's fast, that actually breathe out carbon dioxide, and it causes incoherent heart rhythms, because your rhythm of breath is also related to the rhythm of your heart. So when you breathe in a perfect rhythm, you actually create a state of coherence because when you breathe in, you stimulate sympathetic. When you breathe out, you stimulate parasympathetic. So when you breathe in a perfect rhythm, you actually create a harmony between your heart and your brain. And every function in your body is actually subservient to the rhythm of your breath. So that's your circadian rhythm, infradian rhythm, ultradian rhythm. It deals with all of these rhythms, biorhythms in your body that is your how you exist.
Yeah.
They're all those functions are all dependent on the rhythm of your breath. So when your rhythm of breath goes erratic, it causes irregularities in all the other functions, even down to sleep. So the yogis knew that by conscious rhythmic breathing, we can actually harmonize the nervous system. So the way I've created this special technique is you do rhythmic breathing at slightly faster rate than normal. And what that does is it breathes out a little bit extra of the carbon dioxide than you normally breathe in. You breathe in more oxygen. but you don't do this for extremely long periods of time. You just do it for a few minutes. What
Mm-hmm.
that does is it fully saturates your bloodstream with oxygen. So if you have a pulse oximeter, your oxygen levels will go to like 98 to 100. Okay. But what that also does, because you breathe out carbon dioxide, is it allows you to then hold your breath for longer than you normally can. And this is where the magic happens. So when you hold your breath for longer than the comfort zone that you're used to, you raise carbon dioxide up. So the carbon dioxide raises up in the cells, okay? And through the Bohr effect, this effect called the Bohr effect, the red blood cells come off, the oxygen comes off the hemoglobin of your red blood cells and starts to shoot into the tissues where the oxygen is needed. It becomes like a pump of sending oxygen into the tissues, okay? And then that carbon dioxide, what it also does is, if you get good at this, you'll be able to start holding your breath for fairly long periods of time. When you usually hold your breath for more than 1:30 with no air in the lungs on your exhale, you create this positive stress response in the body, and it creates this adaptive response to having less than normal oxygen. You go into a state called intermittent hypoxia, and that creates this adaptive response. You get better vascularization, nitric oxide comes out, it increases blood flow, vascularization, you create better blood flow in your heart and your brain. Everything optimizes. It's an amazing benefits you can get. It's like going into a sauna for 20 minutes or going into like the ice, like our friend Wim Hof's really into. But through the breath, that positive stress response of the breath, you can also invoke really powerful changes. And so our techniques is like different rhythms, like 2/4 or 4/8 rhythms in a sequence with breath retentions in between. And what this does is in the morning, it really kind of resets and reharmonizes the body and brings you into this like flow state right from the start of the day. It's also a really good technique to prepare you if you do yoga, if you want to do yoga or anything like that, or even workout, exercise. It like, gets you in a really good state for exercise as well.
Yeah,
And then we have other rhythms that help you go to sleep. So through the rhythms of breath and the length of breath, breathing out, breathing in, you can actually change your physiology and work on the autonomic nervous system. This is our way of controlling the autonomic nervous system, which we've been told that we can't control without drugs or surgery and things like that. But actually, yogis for thousands of years have been using power of the breath to control the autonomic nervous system.
yeah.
There you go.
No, that's a great explanation. I love it. And I can so relate because, like I was saying off air earlier, I spent a week with Wim Hof exploring different breathing techniques and ideas quite a number of years back. And we actually have a regular ice bath community now where we ice bath once a week and we have a breathing practice before. And it's made a huge fundamental difference over the years. It's really hard to explain until you start to embody it,
Yes.
And it definitely brings a level of clarity into who we really are if we're willing to start to go there and do the work. But it does take effort, it's like anything.
Just requires consistent like routine.
Yeah, totally. So I'm interested as well with this because you're certainly creating a movement with SOMA and SOMA Breath, and there was an element for you where you would have had to have made a conscious decision as you started to explore this work, recover from your health, and actually start to go down to this path for you.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And I only say it because I've done the same myself. And from the outside looking in, it's very easy to assume, there he is. He's just doing that. This is great. I'm going to get on board. What was the defining point for you where you knew you were going to do that? And was it like a realization that come to you, or was there an exploration of the work that just kind of unfolded? How did it happen? Because I think
with SOMA in specific, with SOMA, So actually, what happened was I was in a little bit of disbelief whether the breathing had anything to do with my recovery from colitis. And then what happened was, it seemed too simple, all right, that had an impact in the beginning. And so what happened was, so I started to, like every night, or every day actually at this point when I was creating my first business. So I went really into music. Music was my big passion. And I started to realize that I could make really good meditation music, and I could combine it with like breathing techniques to relax and go to sleep and things like that. And that turned into quite a thriving online business, and I started making music for therapists. This was like in 2012 to 2013. And I started to create a automated business around my passion, and I started to travel around the world. But I was never really sure if it was the breathing techniques that were doing anything that dramatic, right? And it was when I started to go to explore and start meeting like yogis and people who are really into pranayama and stuff, and also people like Wim Hof, that I started to realize actually this breathing techniques I've been doing is probably the most impactful thing, you know, science. And then I really learned the science. I went to Rishikesh and I spent some time with a doctor there who is trained in this very ancient Himalayan form of yoga and pranayama, and he uses it to heal patients in his clinics. That's when I got the real, like, conclusive proof that this breathing stuff really is magic. And you know, I spent a lot of time with Wim. Wim became a good friend of mine, and we did like music together. I made the music to the Wim Hof method and all that. But his focus is really more on this kind of power energy kind of, like, you know, breath that really creates a lot of fire. Inner fire. That's why his company's called Inner Fire. But what I was doing, pranayama, was more the balancing and bringing people into like the healing states. So I wanted to make something that everyone could use, that would be like more very therapeutic. And that's why I went really deep into pranayama, to like, 'cause I realized there's not one size fits all. Like there's different rhythms of breathing for different people. Different. As a pharmacist, that was my insights. And what happened was then I actually, because I love dance music, I love music, I love actually like the celebration of life, going to a rave and everyone dancing together and having a good time. And what happened was, on the way I discovered like this rebirthing and holotropic and the states people will get into just with the breath. And so I actually went and I started to study like different types of kumbhaka techniques. So the Kevala kumbhaka, which is where you go into this breathless state, and it requires you to go into, you do a lot of, it's very much like holotropic breathing, where you, at the end of it, you don't feel like you need to breathe at all. And then rebirthing is similar, like very similar. And then the Wim Hof stuff's got all the breath retentions in there and all that, which is called kumbhaka and pranayama. And so I was like, I started to like make music to be the soundtrack, because what I saw was missing in all of these things was there was no guiding music. And then I realized actually something really profound. I was like, actually music has a beat to it. And the ancient, if you look at the ancient African tribal people, the ancient Indians, who still in the villages, still do this, is they've used music with rhythm to guide people into trance states, to invoke trance states with a lot of chanting, mantras, and breathing at the same time. And so I started to make this really powerful music, this like very like kind of transcendental music that takes you on a journey but has beats to it. And so when I was living in Koh Phangan in Thailand, and just with a few friends, I started to test it out. Like this breathing in beats, I call it breathing in beats, is rhythmic breathing to a beat, combined with breath retention techniques and using some tantric techniques of moving energy, using like the root lock, the sexual energy locks. And I started to do it with my friends on the beach, and people were just going nuts. That like 4 people on the beach turned into like 20 people in a yoga studio, which turned into 200 people at this like Tantra festivals, which turned into like people coming off from like Russell Howard from the UK came and did a TV show, and he experienced the whole thing, and it started to turn into this thing where I was like getting invited to places to do these things, to do these sessions, and like I got involved with Mind Valley and did a lot of stuff with them and at their events, and then I realized actually like I got something here, because everyone kept asking me, how do you, can you certify me in this method? And what I realized was what I've done is I've almost recycled or modernized a very ancient practice of kumbhaka with rhythmic breathing, which is where the legend of Soma kind of leads to. And the legend of Soma in the Rig Veda, which is the text that is the origin story of all of these modern religions, from Tantra to yoga, Buddhism, everything comes from this strange story, because it's one of the oldest religious texts, is the Rig Veda. And in there they talk about this psychedelic plant concoction with Soma that the rishis would use to invoke the gods, to speak to the divine. Sounds a lot like ayahuasca or San Pedro or, magic mushrooms or anything like that. And it's probably a catch-all name for such shamanic kind of plants. And what happened was, during this time, everyone was obsessed and hooked on the Soma for their happiness and bliss. And then at one point, the Soma starts to run out. So they start to freak out because they're so dependent on Soma for their happiness. And that's when God Indra, who's the most addictive of all, says, we've got to go inward to discover how to create the Soma within. And Soma within is like the DMT molecule, the spirit molecule, the thing that is, when you release in abundance, you have this transcendental spiritual awakening, like if you do a big dose of shrooms or something like that. So so that's literally how they discovered Tantra, which is the foundation of like yoga, meditation, pranayama, Ayurveda. All of these things like originate from these practices of energy moving through the body, or Tantra. It was the original kind of methods of moving energy around the body. And that was what they realized, was that actually through the breath, we can actually create any of the drugs that we need. That we already produce everything we need already. They exist in nature. We already do it. We just don't know how to use it. And that's when people start to become less dependent on external things. And nowadays, if you look at the modern world, we're so dependent on the external physical world for our happiness. And the Soma is just like a metaphor. So this practice that they created was like their way of having these psychedelic experiences and getting into incredible states of bliss, ecstasy, through just the power of music, rhythm, breathing, and breath retentions, and like certain energy locks and things. And that became that. If you look at the histories of Soma tribes and cults that moved around the lands, they emerge into the original kind of breathwork cults as well, which then turn into kind of religion eventually over time. So literally, I realized that what I've done is I've just revived something that's thousands of years old, which was also a very powerful way of getting people to come together. And actually, the word spiritual, as I was saying, means to breathe. Well, conspire actually means to breathe together. Conspire. Inspire means to breathe in, right? Expire means to breathe out. Conspire means to breathe together. And the conspiracy was actually a word related to people getting together and having a shared interest and creating a bond with each other through breathing. So conspiracy back in the day was actually a good thing, and then it got changed into a bad thing when the Christians started to label everyone as heretics, and anyone who was doing anything weird and tantric was considered to be conspiring against them.
Yeah.
So that's where the word negative connotation comes with. So my big conspiracy right now is I'm getting this community of people breathing together, celebrating life together, and creating community together. And that's one of the things we've really manifested through SOMA.
Yeah, well, you're clearly doing a good job of it. It's quite incredible. Yeah. Question for you: those experiences, those heightened experiences through um, having something like that, where you talk about soma or even the dimethyltryptamine release, like they can be quite profound experiences. And how do you find people are responding to it when they're coming to these events and having something like that, and then going back and like, do you think we should all be experiencing that, or do you think it's a choice? Like, what have you? What's your experience taught you over the years with this?
That's a really good question. I think you get called to it. We don't push it on anyone. People get attracted to it. So it's just like with any kind of shamanic plant medicine.
Mhm.
Like you shouldn't, as a shaman, should not be going around pushing and encouraging people to do it and forcing it upon people. It's the idea is that the plant calls you to it, and the spirit, I believe, also calls you to it when you need it. And so I never push it on anyone. We use, the laws of attraction to bring people into the community. And I think like it's a great alternative. The idea is it's a great alternative to taking substances that may be very extremely traumatizing for certain people because there's no control over the experience. With breathing practices, you just can switch it off very quickly.
Yeah.
You don't have to endure a 4 hour long journey without your control. Um, it's just something you can just switch off like very quickly. So we've never had any, and the way I do it with Soma, the way it worked is much more blissful. I've never had any like real anything traumatic or negative happening. Whereas I've seen with certain other breathing practices like holotropic, which are much more extreme, there are people get traumatized by it, especially if they don't have good instructors who give people the right warnings of what to expect. You need to have good facilitators. That's why we have a really good training in our instructor training to make
Yeah.
sure you can. And yeah, and there's different stages. So we never recommend people go straight into these advanced kind of psychedelic states. You build up to it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I've experienced both plant-based medicine and different breathing techniques that take you there. And like you say, there's definitely a much more element of it feels safer, more control around those
Yeah,
states, which is really important because then you can lean in and surrender to it more, as opposed to start fighting it.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. I got questions I ask everyone on the show, and it's fascinating. You might have answered this already. I don't know, but what's been a low point in your life that has later turned out to be a blessing?
Yeah, I think I've had several, but the most key turning point was definitely when I was told like I was going to have my colon removed. That was like at 30 years old or whatever I was, to have my colon removed. I mean, that was intense. Yeah. So, yeah.
How do you take news like that and really turn it around?
Pray. No, I just, I have no explanation of exactly what happened because it was almost like it was a weird time. I was even getting like crazy lightning flashes in my eyes. Something weird happened to me like at that point. Imagine you've lost like 3 stone in weight. So that's like going. I was like 40 kgs in weight at one point. I was so skinny and sick. I was on the verge of like just death. I was on my deathbed, I would say. Like if I'd lost any more weight and blood, I might have died. So uh, it's weird. Like it was like when my Swami gave me that ray of hope that there is a way out other than what the doctor told me. like it was like everything went into a line. And when she told me like that you have a gift, you know, this is not this is not a curse, this is a gift. Because for a while, like my kind of perception of the world was like we are screwed. This planet is game over for this planet. Like I know, I mean, you could still argue that I was right back then, judging by the way things have, you know, kind of been manifesting, which isn't true. There's a lot of hype, which I realized as well. Um, I, you know, I just felt like I had to do something with this opportunity because it was like I now saw everything as a game. I was like, if I can fix myself, and I'll do everything I can. And the other thing what gave me hope was realizing actually you can make money and you don't need to have a job, location independent. When I realized actually that I can build a business online around my passion, which was music, that was the biggest like boom. I'm surprised people still don't even try and make a second income like online, to even just pay off their mortgage or something, because we have so much opportunity right now. Like nobody should be stressing about a job that they don't want to do. There's so much opportunity to move and change. There's so many exciting things going on. And back then, for me, the most exciting thing was this internet. This thing about the internet. You know, 2011 was like, whoa, I can actually reach people without being, you know, um, in this little cubicle in the pharmacy. That
Yeah.
was the biggest motivator of all.
Yeah.
Because I
Amazing.
knew it was just a system. I just needed to do these things. It gives you more clarity when you realize that somebody else has walked the path. And if you just follow what they've done, if you model the success, you're most likely to get the same or better results. And that's what these are the little turning points that give people hope and get them out of their shit situations.
Yeah. Totally. I couldn't agree more. I mean, look at us today, right? We're talking on the internet, and this will get
Yeah,
listened by thousands of people over time, and it has impact, you know?
massive.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
incredible.
as a
What
person.
what does your morning routine look like?
It depends. I'm traveling a lot these days, so it can sometimes gets broken. But a typical one is we would do in the morning. It starts off. It's an hour. It's like about an hour routine, which is first thing in the morning. I hydrate. So I have lots of water in the morning. Hydrate myself. And the second step is we go in and we do a bit of this special ecstatic dancing to dance music, like which shakes up both sides of the hemispheres of the brain, that activates both sides. Then that prepares you with chanting. We do like a few minutes of chanting Om in a specific way. And then we go into the breathwork routine, which I was talking about, which then prepares us for the Soma yoga. And then we'll do this special type of yoga where it's more like a meditation. And that kind of gets you going. And I'll do a few strengthening exercises as well, cardio, holding breath and doing push-ups, doing some anaerobic kind of exercises in the morning as well. Swimming a couple of laps, holding your breath underwater, stuff like that. But yeah, and then I'll eat. Then I'll usually eat after that.
Sounds like a good start to the day, that's for sure.
Yeah, gets you into that zone.
Totally.
Yeah.
Last question. If you could have dinner with anyone tonight from anywhere in the world in any time frame, who would you think it would be and why?
Oh, any time in history.
Yeah.
Hmm. I think it would have to be like going one on one with Shiva himself, or Brahma. One of the these. I think all three of them, if it's possible. All of the prophets. I'd love to know their real, whether they really existed, or their true stories, or if they're what they really are like. Are they really just normal, average, everyday people? Do people like put on a pedestal and made out to be like these perfect human specimens, or were they just normal average people who, you know, also had the same things? I really believe that we're all gurus. We all have gifts, and everyone is perfectly imperfect. And I would love to just be able to see that perfectly imperfect prophet from the past.
Yeah. Be great. Mate, any last words for the people to ponder on of everything we covered today?
I always love to leave people with one question to ask every single time you wake up in the morning. And that is, if you can answer this in the right way with conviction, then you're going to be healthy. And that is, if you wake up every day like feeling like you have to do something to survive, like say your job to pay the bills, or to be in this relationship to keep your parents happy, or whatever, that having to is what leads to chronic stress. But if you wake up with absolute enthusiasm to do a hard day's work, whatever it is, to be, you know, the best partner you can possibly be, that enthusiasm will lead to health and happiness. And what we're trying to do with SOMA is to give people that answer, you know, the right answer for them. And the other thing is just the real definition of wellness, which is we-ness. The first two letters of wellness is we. First letter of illness is I. So the more I-centered people are, the more individual people are, the more disconnected from community people are, the more likely they are to get sick. You know, it's very noticeable. I've seen it time and time again as a pharmacist. So the we-ness, bringing the we-ness back, the wellness, is a big, like, mission of SOMA.
Beautiful. I couldn't agree more. Community is a very important thing, you know.
Yeah.
Mate, if anyone listening to this wants to explore your work more, explore the breath, where's the best place to send them?
Yeah, certainly. I would say the best is resource for breathwork at the moment, because I'm completely biased, is somabreath.com. So SOMA breath, BREATH.com. You can also go /Awaken and download, like, you can get some free music, some tracks to start practicing with, and some tutorials, and sign up for our webinar as well, which it teaches you how to raise your heart rate, lower your heart rate, using the power of your breath, and tap into your autonomic nervous system, go into healing states, create energy states, create fire within, you know, cool your body down, all of that stuff for free we have in this webinar. And you get to really learn, like, and experience the SOMA breathing technique, Awakening, I'll call it, which actually has an amazing effect of, as I said, like waking you up in the morning in the right way, harmonizing the physiology, but also over time with deeper practice, it actually can enhance the function of your brain and create, through the power of directed neurogenesis, strength in areas of the brain that you want to grow. So if you want to create more compassion, self-esteem, self-confidence, even talents and skills, you can do so through the right intention. And this is what SOMA is all about. It's like creating the right intention in your life, for your life, right purpose and right action.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Niraj, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your wisdom. I have no doubt that conversation will go down very well with a lot of the guys listening to this. So I appreciate all that you're doing and putting out to the world. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Vice versa. Appreciate everything you do.
You're welcome.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Peace.